All right, another recording here, still watermarked and missing headset, but we are working on that, I promise. This is following up on the one from yesterday. Um, what's interesting is I've already made a couple of changes. I've been playing against a guy named Mox Nix, who has a fantastic combo deck. I think it's got. He says it's tuned for multiplayer. I think it could be tuned even further for 1v1. But regardless, that deck's pushed me really hard and forced me to realize that some of the things that I like about this deck probably needed to get out. I had things in here designed to make the deck more combo-y or faster, and I had to pull them out and just put in more early defenses, i.e. more counter spells. So you'll note that the deck now has Memory Lapse and Negate. Um, and I took out both of the temples. I tested those out. You probably saw those in the last video. I went ahead and just dropped down to 28 lands. It's not a big deal with the Ponder and Preordains to help fix the mana. The deck's been running 29 for a really long time. But what it gets down to is that with temples, I was looking for counter spells, so I just took them out, put in two more cheap counter spells in the first place. And overall, I don't rely on mana, lands to produce my mana anyway. So that said, here was a fantastic game, and I'm playing against. Oh, you gotta kill the sound. One moment. Okay, I'm playing against Wooly Cerna here, who's running Riku, and I decide I'm gonna keep a really sketchy hand. Pretty much any land would get me Ponder here and make this hand good. Any artifact mana of two mana or below would probably make this hand good. Um, and so I decided I'm going to keep a really questionable hand and play it out. And then you'll see what's about to happen here. Because I'm going first, I figured I had a little bit more time. So I blank on the first draw. He makes just plays a tapped land. And I draw Condescend. So I have to figure out what to discard. So for here, the first discard's relatively easy. This is the other reason I kept it. I can throw away Mystical Teachings. Since it has flashback, it's not too painful. Although sometimes that's incorrect. Sometimes, when teachings is your only way to save yourself, you have to hold it because you'll never get 6 mana to flash it back. But in this case, I figured it was okay. So he's ramping up. And I'm blank again. So now I have to figure out what else I'm going to throw away. And the best option when I don't even have, when my goal here is to get blue and I don't have 2 colors of mana, probably won't for a really long time, I have to throw away Utter End. Sucks because it's a solution card for a lot of things, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, my opponent has Ancient Tomb, so now having having the advantage of having a land that produces 2 mana on the second turn, he caught up and surpassed my mana, and now he's way ahead. He's more than double my mana base. He uses his 5 mana in order to play Green Sun Zenith. As soon as I saw the mana ticking down like that, I knew it was a GSZ. For Oracle and hits on the land. So now, I was behind and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. Okay, I top decked the Signet. Like I said, any artifact mana would have worked. Came a little late. So he temples away a Farseek and reveals Sylvan Library. So I know I have to counter Sylvan next turn. If I don't, I lose. 100% guaranteed. Not beating a Sylvan Library this far behind in the game. So I just have to hope he doesn't do anything too nasty this turn. He plays Riku. I guess that's not too nasty, although the fact that he can copy creatures and spells is bad. I'd be in worse shape if this were something like Fact or Fiction, because then he'd just copy it. I'd clearly be dead here. I would have to Swords Riku on my turn, and that would be bad. Anyway, so I drew a land, and I had to think exactly what I want to do with this situation here. But I figure I may have to memory lapse the Sylvan, which means that I have to take the risk. I have to take the risk of allowing him to have Riku, because there's no real good way. Like if I tap Tomb and I put in a Signet and I plow, then say go, I won't have enough mana for lapse. If I put Watergrave in the Signet for swords, it's the same problem. So I'm going to have to just say go here and hope that he doesn't have a counter spell, because if he has a counter that he can copy, and clearly, you know, I'm dead. A lot of my playing in this desperation mode is I have to go at best case scenario. I just have to play like he doesn't have the thing that's going to beat me, because if he has it, he wins anyway. So I can't play as though he has it. I have to play as though what I want to do is going to resolve. So lovely for me, he revealed a survival, another extremely powerful card, but at least it's not more ramp. Considering I'm holding Condescend, I mean, I'm hoping like at some point I'll get to use it. When he plays Temple of the False Gods, I figure, yeah, this card's basically probably useless now. But he does do me a small favor, tapping for a big Soul of the Harvest. Another card drawing engine, and probably a better target for Swords to Plowshares, but he actually gets greedy a little bit. Well, I would if I were him too, and he clones it with his Riku. So all of a sudden my Condescend is actually useful, because I'm pretty sure the next play here is Sylvan Library out of his hand, right? So the trick is how do I want to best spend my mana? So what I decided to do is I can pump the mana into Azorius Signet, Brainstorm, Swords to Plowshares, and Condescend all in one turn. So I brainstorm into this. Now I'm going to put back, I have to put back 2 cards, so what do you put back? I mean, Future Sight's my long-term chance to win the game. Gilded Lotus and Future Sight, those 2 cards, because Gilded Lotus will fix all my mana problems with 1 card, and Future Sight will fix all of my card drawing issues with 1 card. So I'm not putting those back. But because I drew the Tithe, I can actually put back the island, because I'm going to go fetch 2 lands, and I don't need, like, I'll have 2 guaranteed land drops, and by the time I hit my 3rd, like, opportunity to draw land, I already have Gilded Lotus, I just won't need it. So I don't need a 3rd land in my hand. So I put back island, but what's the other card you put back here? I mean, everything else kind of gets me in the game. Trinket Mage for Soul Ring or Crypt, and I need my counters. So as weird as it is, even with all those targets in play, I decided I'm going to put back Swords to Plowshares. I'm not going to win by removing 1 Soul of the Harvest or Riku. I actually have to keep his creatures off the board so that he doesn't draw 2 cards, because if a single creature hits, I'm screwed. I know his next card's Survival. I can Memory Lapse and put it back on top of his deck, which is like a time walk for me, because presumably he doesn't have any more creatures in his hand. He's only got 2 cards. So bottom line is, I'm not going to win with swords. I need to win with Terminus or something along those lines. A single target solution is not good for me here. So I just get rid of it. I dump it. And then Tithe for Tundra and a Scrubland. I've got enough blue. I think I'd rather just have the Scrubland in case. This gives me 2 lands in case I draw Shackles and steal either of these. I'm not going to be stealing the big guys. And in case he has the ability to attack my black, I wanted to back up. And of course, I make the Condescend play, revealing yet more mana. Too much, too late. But fortunately, Condescend lets me get rid of both of those cards. It turns out that Oracle is actually really working for me, because it's allowing me to make better decisions this game. Thanks to the power of the Condescend's Scry, I'm able to draw a Vampiric Tutor this turn, which is huge. So I get down with the Tundra and the Lotus. That allows me to catch up. I mean, what, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 2 is 10. So I'm really almost even on mana, and Trinket Mage can fix the rest. I'm actually going to pull ahead on mana next turn. One reason why I'll tend to hold Lotus, it'll be one of the last cards you pry out of my hand. So luckily for me, he doesn't reveal more land. He has a Time Walk on top. Hopefully he'll never get to that, thanks to the Memory Lapse. So he sends in with the team. The damage is starting to add up, but fortunately, Oloro's life gain is kind of keeping me alive this game. And then he plays, well, we know he drew Survival, so what is all this that he's about to do? Yuck, Terastodon. Well, I'm not going to be countering Survival, that's for sure. Terastodon cannot land. Let's hope he doesn't have a counter. Okay, he doesn't. So he's got Survival and an unknown card in his hand. And he decides to play Survival, which I don't mind at all because, I mean, what is he going to do? Draw Terastodon and discard it to Survival? That's the best creature in his whole deck right now, I think. So, um, this is basically useless until Terastodon's answered. So now I have basically this window. I've got 24 life I'm working with, and a lot of problems, and I have to kind of deal with them all. I need to deal with the creatures. I need a short-term answer, but I also need some long-term development. If I go fetch Terminus right here, for example, I'm probably going to lose because I fetch Terminus, and then what happens? He plays Terastodon, crushes my Lotus, and I'm not in that game. So I can't get Terminus. So if I get a counterspell, well, that's certainly not going to save me. So what do you get? Here are the options. I fetch Humility. That takes care of the board and his next top deck. It also effectively disenchants Survival because what is he going to do? Discard a 1/1 to go get a 1/1? I mean, be my guest. There's a tiny number of creatures who work through a Survival. For example, he could have Detritivore, the suspend X-red suspend creature who destroys a non-basic land every upkeep while it's suspended. Or he could have the blue version, which would draw an extra cards. And there's a couple other things, but for the most part, I think Humility is going to shut off the majority of his deck. The nice thing too is that I can Trinket Mage right now, and use that to fix my development problem. I have enough mana for Ponder. I'm going to shuffle all three of those away because I don't need mana. And because I drew Muddle, I'm actually going to completely change my whole strategy here. After saying all that, I'm going to completely change my whole strategy and Muddle for Winter Orb and throw down the Orb. So what I've decided to do is, instead of shutting off Survival in his creatures and leaving him with, he'll have a Time Walk underneath the Terastodon. He has a Mystery card in hand. He get all his mana back. Clearly, he would not play. Most likely, he wouldn't play Terastodon right there. But regardless, the point is, if I let him untap with a Humility out, then the efficacy of playing Winter Orb later, it just isn't there. But if I orb him now, I'm trading life for board control, and in Oloro, that's kind of like absolutely what you want to do. So I thought he would only send the 2 6/6s, but he sends the team, which is kind of odd. I was really happy to trade Trinket Mage for Oracle because Oracle is one of the ways you can work around a Winter Orb. Of course, we knew his next card was Time Walk, but Walk the Aeons. Anything that takes an extra turn is called Time Walk. But at any rate, he doesn't know that I vamp for Humility, so I suppose maybe from his perspective that seemed like the right play at the time. So now I'm down to taking only 1 damage per turn, effectively. Although if he can get me down to 3, then he can kill me before Oloro's life gain, so I have a little less life than it looks like. So nothing really happens that turn. And down comes so this was our long-term game plan from the beginning, get Gilded Lotus and Future Sight into play, and that's exactly what happened. So here we go, into one of the new cards, Preordained. So I figure the best way to use a Preordained here is not to tap lands excessively, so I'm just going to use the Mana Vault and pump it into the Signet, convert it into colored mana through the Signet. I'm holding Control so I can respond if the top card were an instant, like say the Swords to Plowshares was back or something. It's not. So interestingly enough, in this game I played 2 cards that are new, Ponder and Preordain, and both of them have been fantastic. Ponder let me get rid of 3 mana sources, and so did Preordain. Ponder drew me the Vamp. Preordain dumped 2 mana sources, put a Talisman into my hand, and Arid Mesa on top, which is where I want it. So I'm able to play Dissolve off the top, run the Talisman out, and because I was able to play the Talisman, I can actually cast the Dissolve. I don't have to use a fetch land and shuffle it away to play it. So I'm feeling pretty good now. Got my counter up. He decides to Survival Terastodon, definitely makes sense. And he goes and gets Fierce Empath. Doesn't really make that much sense, but again, he's just trading 1/1s for 1/1s. I don't really care which one he gets. I would have gotten a Llanowar Elf or something, if anything. But a lot of times I've noticed people do this. Creatures with come into play abilities, they play it into humility. Like, it doesn't click that that creature doesn't have any ability for them, and that may have been what happened here. So the problem for me slightly is that I am taking a beating. So I'm at 4, right? If I use this fetch, I'll be at 3. Then I gain 2 life, I'll be at 5. Probably take a point of damage from Vault would be 4, and then he would kill me. So I mean, like, something in that whole, stream has to change. I can't play it out that way. But everything's all right. Remember that card I discarded on turn 2? Well, it's time for that thing to do its role now. So I tap 7 mana because I know exactly what I want to get here, leaving blue in the pool. I'm okay throwing away Counterspell in order to protect 4 life, when 4 life represents, 2/3 of my life total. Otherwise, I would have drawn the Counterspell and waited a turn to make this play. So I draw Mystical Tutor, or I put Mystical Tutor in my hand, Mystical for Terminus, put Terminus on the stack with an Imperial Seal sitting on top of my library, and my opponent rightly concedes at this point he's locked out of the game. But if he hadn't conceded, I mean, I would have had to spend a mana, probably the Scrubland, in order to cast the Terminus. And then if he hadn't spent the mana, I'm not sure exactly how I would have played this out, but I probably would have Imperial Sealed just for a strip mine, just to buy a little bit more time. Stripped whatever he untapped, and then used Future Sight to dominate. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Here's the deck in its entirety. It's very hard to show the full list because they won't let me expand it all the way up anymore. It's a very stupid feature that I was upset about that they added in to Magic Online a while back, because they said people weren't smart enough to they were expanding this, and then they were like, oh my gosh, what do? I can't do anything. They weren't smart. There was no solution other than preventing us from doing this, as opposed to, like, putting a little note under here that said minimize or something. Alright, well, enough about Moto. I hope you enjoyed the video. In the future I'll probably make some I'll probably run some speed games, but I'm still, like, kind of locking down where I want to be with this version of Oloro, and so stay tuned. We'll see more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.